of humility, his feet are on the ground, and he shares love with his curiosity and his laughter. And we all love you, Adele.
Welcome. We will get started. Just a few minutes behind schedule, but that's okay. Thanks everybody for your patience. Welcome to the book launch of Adele Ben-Harhara's third book, My Silver Lining. We're all very excited to see such a diverse and enthusiastic crowd to come out for this, so thank you. My name is Mariam El-Gahwaji, and I am a friend of Adele's. But before I get talking about how I know Adele and myself a little bit, I'm going to do a land acknowledgement. With gratitude, mutual respect, and reciprocity, we acknowledge the ancestral home, culture, and oral teachings of Treaty 7 signatories, which include the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the I-Ithka Stony Nakota Nation, consisting of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Good Stony bands, and the people of Tsuut'ina Nation, as well as the city of Calgary is also the homeland of historic Northwest Métis and the Utai-Pensuwak Métis government, Métis Nation Battle River Territory, Nose Hill Métis District 5, and Elbow Métis District 6. We celebrate stories, the stories of community, and the land that we live on. We serve the community of Wingchispa, Gutsistsi, and Mokinstis, which describe the gathering place where the Bow and the Elbow River meet. We respect all people who share, celebrate, and care for Treaty 7 territory of Southern Alberta, and we honor the original caretakers of the land who remind us of the ongoing histories that precede us. We recognize our shared responsibility going forward to help bring everyone together on this journey of truth and reconciliation. So our agenda today, we're going to start off with a traditional Ethiopian dance, and then we're going to hear from a lovely panel of speakers who are going to talk to you about the book and the impression that it has made on them. And then we're going to follow that with a Yemeni traditional dance, and then there will be a book signing upstairs, so make sure that you grab a book and grab your questions and come speak to Adele. So without further ado, I am going to invite our first group of dancers to the stage, and I'll just ask them to come out and I will introduce them briefly to you. Girls. Okay, so this beautiful group of young women are a group from the University of Calgary. They are connected to the Ethiopian Eritrean Student Association, and they will be performing 4 dances for you today from 4 different tribal groups: Tigari, Oromo, Gurage, and lastly, Amhara. These women are of Ethiopian and Eritrean background, and we'll ask them to start the music. Mani So beautiful. What gorgeous costumes, and that's a great way to start the day. So now it is my pleasure to invite over the group of panelists, but before we do that, I promised that I would speak to how I know Adele, as many of these folks are going to. So as I mentioned, my name is Mary Mulgahawaji, and I met Adele during COVID. I was looking for a new job. Like many people, my work situation shifted during COVID, and I was looking for some advice about project management. And I reached out to him through Facebook. He was a mutual contact, and there was some information about what he did for work. And I reached out to him, and he was so generous with his time and his knowledge, complete stranger, and really asked for nothing in return. And yeah, so that was a few years ago, and I've been very lucky to call Adele friend. So this is the kind of person whose life we're gonna see in these 3 books. And I'm very excited to welcome the panel that's going to tell you more about how his story has impacted them. The first person in the panel that will be speaking about Adele and his books is Dr. Mary Noseworthy. So Dr. Mary is a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Calgary. and a former asthma clinic director at the Alberta Children's Hospital. She is a mother of 4, and she played a pivotal role in Adele's life by strongly, and when women tell you to do something, you better do it, strongly encouraging Adele to write his story, because she was so moved by what he had to share with her when they went for a run together. So Dr. Mary's support for this project really includes more than just encouragement, but genealogy research through which she discovered a military record of Adele's father. And so please join me in welcoming Dr. Mary Noseworthy.
Thank you. We have an excellent crowd here today. Thank you all for coming and being interested in Adele's story. It certainly is very captivating. And when he told me his story back in 2019, I was speechless. I've heard a lot of stories as a pediatrician over my 30 years of medical training and experience and clinical practice. And the hairs just went up on my arm when he told me about his childhood. I was captivated. So this is his 3rd book in the trilogy series about his life. It is so interesting how he survived his childhood and all of his hardships and joys therein. Adele and I met through our love of hiking here in the Canadian Rockies through a mutual friend, Dr. Laura Davis, and we were actually on a trip to Lake Louise when he started to craft little bits of his story. And I was like, Adele, you have to write this down. I was like, wow. And he went through how he survived his childhood, how he thrived. He talked about his mother, he talked about his father. And I have this little side hobby of researching military events, and my particular interest is the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, who was a group of 500 soldiers that fought for the British in the First World War, and they were annihilated basically on July 1st, 1916, which is part of my Newfoundland roots, my Newfoundland heritage. I've been researching that group for years, so I can take the British military system and I can find anybody. I said to Adele, he had no idea who his father was, or he knew who he was, but he didn't have the military records. I said, all I need is your dad's military number, the dog tag. So he got me that, and literally within about 8 to 15 minutes, I had found his dad online, and I called him back to say, you're not gonna believe this is really unreal. He was so overwhelmed by emotion that he could not answer the phone as he listened to me leave my message on his voicemail. And he couldn't speak to me for about a week. He was so overwhelmed by the news that I had located his dad that quickly. So you're gonna hear about Adele's story today, the 3rd part of his story. Each book is very intuitive in his development, and there's a really definite message from today, which you're going to hear about shortly. And being a Newfoundlander, I've heard stories all my life. I've encouraged stories. I've told stories, and this is a story that needs to be told. And I thank you all for being here today to hear this wonderful story. Thank you. So I'm now going to introduce Carolyn Kildare, who has known Adele for many years as well through their mutual involvement in the local running and hiking communities. She has provided essential support and encouragement to Adele as he developed his interest in running and hiking. If you've been on his Facebook or Instagram pages, you will see the most beautiful, captivating pictures of the Rocky Mountains from his hikes. And he has run in so many marathons around the world. It's amazing and inspiring. Carolyn is going to speak about her impression of Adele's story and his sporting journey and accommodations.
Thank you, Mary. I first met Adele through the running room. I said, Adele, when did I get to meet you? And he said, oh, I don't know, and I think it's probably been 12 or 13 years now. I first started running in 2011 through the running room. And back in the day, the running room really was the central feature of the running community in Calgary. The running room would sponsor running races, so they were a regular feature. There'd be a race almost every weekend happening somewhere in the city. They would sponsor clinics where people would come together, learn to build up their program so that they were equipped for that race, and then celebrate together afterwards. And there would be regular run clubs on Wednesdays and Sundays where we would do a club run and then have drinks and so forth afterwards. So there's always been a core of people who are taking part in and sharing common goals through the running community. And Adele says that we first met at a, what was it called? The Resolution Run, which is December 31st. I suppose that makes sense, right? So on December 31st, the running room would sponsor a race down around the Eau Claire area. And that was where I first met Adele. And Adele had started his running journey, as it were, through a Learn to Run clinic in the running room. And he did his first marathon in 2014. And then he says that he qualified for Boston after he ran his third marathon, and his third marathon was an hour faster than his first one. So that's pretty amazing. Every runner says, I'm really slow, but I'm trying to get faster. We always have a goal that we're aiming for. We're always wanting to shave a few minutes off our personal best, or we have a target that we're trying to reach. Many runners have a goal of running the Boston Marathon. It's really hard to get into. You have to run a qualifying marathon, so only certain marathons actually qualify you to run for Boston. And then you have to run it at a certain time, so you have to finish the race in a certain period of time. And then when you apply to, as an example, last year 30,000 people ran the Boston Marathon, and there was an application for the following year. And there were 11,000 people who had run a qualifying marathon with a qualifying time who weren't able to get in. So the fact that Adele was able to qualify for the Boston Marathon after only his third marathon really speaks to a natural ability and is something pretty admirable for those of us who are continually trying to get that little bit faster. But not only has Adele achieved the Boston Marathon, he's actually run all 6 of the Abbott World Marathon Majors. So this is a big deal because some of these marathons are even harder to get into than the Boston Marathon. And the 6 marathon majors include Tokyo, Berlin, Boston, Chicago, London, and New York. So each one of those is a race of 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 people, a huge event. And achieving all 6 of those means that the Abbott World Marathon group recognizes your achievement with a special 6-star medal. And when you're at the Boston Marathon and there's a giant wall that has all the names of people who have achieved that accomplishment of running all 6 of those marathons. So again, it's a major achievement for Adele to have gone from having run his first marathon in 2014 to having run 6 of the world's top marathons 10 years later. It's a huge achievement. So in addition to running, Adele is also into hiking, which Mary mentioned. And Adele and I have known each other for all these years, and so when he started to get interested in hiking, he asked me for a little bit of advice. How do I get into this? What do I need? What's the gear that I need? Who do I find to do this? And the hiking community in Calgary is an active group of enthusiasts who are out in the mountains every weekend. They're all over the place, and you can get in part of them through meetup groups. So Andy from Slow and Steady is here today. Slow and Steady is one of the largest hiking groups in North America, and it's an active group of volunteers who get together and take a hike every weekend. There's groups of friends, there's Facebook groups, there's different clubs all over. You don't have to go into the mountains alone if you don't want to. But there are some things that you can learn as you venture into the mountains that can make it a safer and more enjoyable experience. The right gear, understanding what kind of adventure you want to have, and thinking about what you want to be seeing and doing as you're out in the mountains. Adele has come hiking with me on a few occasions. I remember the time that he joined me and my son Ben and my daughter's Pomeranian dog Kiwi on a hike up to Frozen Lake. That was back in 2018. He also accompanied me and a group of friends when we went to stay in Tonkin Valley in Jasper. We stayed at an Alpine Club hut there in 2018? Yeah, I think it was 2019. He borrowed a backpack from me to carry all his gear and was ready with all his clothing and food for the entire weekend when we were staying in that cabin. But I think I pushed him a little bit too far when he came on a scramble with me up Mount Ray. And Mount Ray's rated a moderate scramble. Moderate means a little bit tricky parts and maybe a few places where, you could hurt yourself if you fell. And there was that section where we were butt scooching on a narrow ridge with a long drop off the side. Maybe that was just a bit too much. I remember that after that one, Adele said to me, "I don't think I'm into scrambling." Okay then. Luckily, he didn't have to scramble when he went up Mount Kilimanjaro. Many hikers do post trip reports on social media when they've gone out and done something. I do. I like to share some details of the trail that I've been on, the things that I've seen, and maybe share some parts of the experience so that if somebody else was looking at doing that hike, they would know a little bit about what it was going to be like in their own experience. But Adele approaches it differently. Adele's social media posts are about his expression of gratitude. He'll be out on an adventure and he will be taking pictures of beautiful flowers, colorful lakes, spectacular panoramas, and then posting these beautiful photos on his social media with a caption that says, "Life is good." And that sense of gratitude is really one of the things that I really noticed as I read through Adele's book, My Silver Lining, was the experiences that he's had throughout his life have left him and left an impression of gratitude for all the things that he's been able to see, do, the people he's met, and what he's achieved throughout his life. So I'm now going to introduce our next panelist, and please excuse me while I get out my glasses, because it's one of those things when there's small type. So I'm happy to introduce Summer Fatala. She's joining us from Egypt, and Summer has extensive experience as a teaching assistant at the Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime Transport, which is an esteemed organization in the Arab League. Her teaching focuses on English for Specific Purposes, or ESP, English language and literature, as well as world history. Summer has assisted Adele as an editor and translator in the Arabic versions of his memoir. Come on up, Summer.
I think I'm too short for that. Okay, I'll try to manage. Good afternoon, everybody, or actually, it's good evening back home. So I'm a little bit off point because the jet lag is just hitting me really bad. Today, I'm here to talk about a book that I've been working with Adel for a very long time, trying to prepare that. Unfortunately, at the beginning, he didn't want to work with me because I was Egyptian and I was living in the Middle East. This was his response for the first time. And then he got to know me better, and then he started to realize, yeah, something good might come from this area. But now we're best friends, I guess. He asked me to speak in both languages because I know some people here do not speak English and they speak only Arabic. So don't mind me just jumping between the two languages, please. The third book, it had lots of things that had to do with my own area. It was talking about the Arabs and how do they deal with women, with their own problems, how most of the stuff are just taboos you're not supposed to talk to or talk about or even deal with. As a woman reading that, and definitely as an Arab, and above all of this, as an African, it was a little bit weird at the beginning. Things were just like, I felt embarrassed. I felt so weird. Am I supposed to translate it into the Arabic language? How would people deal when they read it in Arabic language? Would they be okay? Am I going to be in trouble doing that? Oh, what if my name is written there? Do you know where I live? I don't know how to deal with it. But after a while, I started to go through it. I found myself within these lines. I lived in the United States for 3 years. I don't know if you know about this program. It's called Fulbright. I was a Fulbrighter in the US. I was teaching, living, and as a student over there. So most of the problems that he have faced, I have faced as well. Dealing with a very foreign culture to me. I'm veiled. I'm Muslim, so I was the only Muslim veiled girl in the college. So whatever he wrote, I felt it. I really felt it really hard. When it comes to the Arab countries, I know those problems are there, but no one is allowed to talk about. the problems that he faced in Emirates, the problem that he faced in Saudi Arabia, they are there. But no one had the courage to talk about it. Luckily, he had this opportunity to talk about them, and I had the privilege of reading and translating those. As a woman, I'm really proud of what he wrote there, how he approached those problems nicely, honestly, and I had the privilege again to translate those honestly, and I hope people would like that. I think I spoke a lot. So our next one is Nizar. He is an economist in the public sector and a lecturer at the University of Lethbridge and Said. He teaches there economy and business courses, or he's originally from Syria. Nizar also excels as a poet and as a writer, penning verses in both English and Arabic languages. His upcoming book, The Prince of Andalusia, delves into themes of immigration, historical context, and love. Like Adel, Nizar has lived experience of Arab and North American cultures and value. Please welcome my best friend.
Hi, everybody. So the first thing I said when I walked to the room today is, am I the only non-marathon runner here? Yeah, I'm like, wow. I mean, I'm 29 and I haven't even ran a single marathon. And some folks are like 87. One of the folks, and he ran his first marathon when he was like 85. And I'm like, or actually this year, yeah. I was like, wow, okay. So anyhow, yeah. So my name is Nazir or Nathir. So let me just give you a couple of remarks about today's event. My connection to, honestly, Yemen goes back a decade ago. I mean, I have met some of the purest hearts of my life who came from Yemen, actually. As you may know, or you know, so Adel is half Yemeni, he's Yemeni. So, yeah, I have gotten to know him briefly, but I can tell you, reading those stories that he has written in his book and having those thoughts, I realize how much connection I would have and I can relate to that story. I'm, as an Arab Canadian, as a global citizen, I have sensed how sometimes the story itself, him coming from two different cultures, he definitely has tried looking, like for a place in those cultures. Adel, when he went to Yemen when he was young, it was a bit of a struggle, even though it was supposed to be his home country, where, like one of his parents came from, it was definitely a challenge. And in that aspect, I'm gonna actually quote the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish in Arabic, and I'll switch back to English. What Mahmoud Darwish says, وفي السفر الحر بين الثقافات يجد الباحثون عن الجوهر البشري مقاعد كافية للجميع. And that translates in English, and in freely traveling between cultures, those who are looking for the human essence would find enough seats for everyone. So yeah, this is a human story that Adel wrote in this book, the story of immigration. And believe it or not, that's the story of, like those details. It just, it reminds us of something. A lot of those folks who actually make Calgary their home, Alberta and Canada, it's not that they just come and start a life and they build a career here. There are a lot of stories that you don't necessarily see that they have felt before, whether painful or cheerful. Many stories, loved ones that they have left behind, that baggage stays with you as an immigrant. You still have to actually miss those parents or family members, have some grief sometimes. Those bad stories, if you come from a war-torn place, like a lot of places in the world, unfortunately these days, it stays with you. Even the experiences, very small experiences, might be triggering when you go through that, okay? And I'll be honest, while reading this book, I was asking myself, how did Adel feel about this? Because it seemed a lot. It just, like from a very young age until this age, with, sometimes really harsh experiences. I'm somebody who likes to be very logical, but I tend to think about feelings. how did he feel about this? That was really harsh. That was hard. Moving to the States, having those issues. When he moved back to Yemen, after his dad's death, and everybody, or a lot of folks in Yemen were like, this guy is, he's kind of black, or he's browner than a lot of Yemenis in that area. Those types of feelings were things I was trying to imagine while reading the book. I'm going to be very honest. So, as somebody who immigrated to this country, so I came here years ago. I call Calgary home. I call Canada home. I felt really comfortable when in the book he got to Canada. I'm like, I'm comfortable. I know these guys are nice. They'll treat you nicely. It's not as harsh as the States. I've lived in the States. It's one of the best places in my opinion. I disagree with some of the politics, whatever. But when I got to that point, I'm like, you know what? I remind myself a lot how grateful I am to live in Canada. Sometimes multiple times per day. But the most I feel grateful about every time I travel. And I think folks are very kind here, okay? When I got to that side, I'm like, Ada is in good hand. I don't have to worry while reading this book, okay? He's not gonna get deported. He's not gonna be sent back to Yemen or to other places, and I'm just gonna conclude my part with something. It's just the talk of immigration. Like myself, honestly, I was an international student in Canada, in the States, in Lebanon. So I felt a lot of those struggles that Ada had to go through. But unfortunately, we are at a hard time globally and in this country. So according to NANO's survey, 64% of Canadians want fewer immigrants, okay? And not because these people are racist or bigots, no. We are going through a hard time. So whether economically, there are challenges. Sometimes these folks meet bad apples. The media talk in a certain way. I think sometimes we just have to have those conversations. If we feel like, you're not comfortable with something, you can always have those conversations. But at the same time, I want you next time you meet somebody who came here recently, just ask them a few things about back home and see what does that resemble to them. Because immigrants come with a lot of memories, with a lot of baggage, with a lot of pain that they have to bury and go to work every day, go to school every day, and act as if that didn't happen. Especially those who have painful memories that are still ongoing. Those who are coming from places like Palestine, Ukraine, Yemen, places that have wars or painful memories. It is definitely hard sometimes to come and know that your loved ones are struggling. I myself find Adil's stories every day because by teaching classes to many international students, I saw those types of struggles and I continue to see those every day. We talk about that sometimes students have really hard times. Like they're working, they're doing school, it's really challenging. So the story is really touching. I can't tell you enough how much I can relate to it by being an immigrant, by being an Arab, by being an international student, by being a global citizen who tried to look for a place in the human essence in this world. That's kind of my part. I'll move to the fun part of introducing Jerry. I'll be very honest. This guy ran a marathon in May. And I'm like, wow, okay. So Jerry, aside from being a fun person who runs a marathon at the age of, in his 80s, for example, and he's a professional hiker, apparently, so this is really impressive. He's actually a really smart guy. He has a PhD from the University of Oregon in communication, and he's a retired principal and teacher from a school in rural Alberta, I think in the north side, yeah. And what relates to his story to Adil's story is that they've spent a lot of time together. And Jerry was like a foster kid when he was not even 4 years old. So the type of struggle, the lack of the parent figure really resembled. So without further ado, I would like you to introduce Gary Miller to the stage. Thank you so much, everybody.
I think the introductions kind of overdo things a little bit. Yes, I'm a native of rural Alberta, and with a German and French background. When my grandfather came over from Germany in 1903, the name at immigration was changed from Mueller to Miller. It was common at that time. They just didn't know quite what to do with some of the German words. Yes, Adele and I share a few life experiences. They're common, but mine pale in significance to what Adele has been able to carry on through. I want to just talk a little bit about Adele as I view him across the three books, and especially as I view him in light of his early childhood. Well, I want to say that I think I know a little bit about Adele because not only have we shared some notions and ideas about our early childhood and some of the very hurtful things that we put up with, but we've run a few runs together. We've run a few marathons, and I've always found Adele to be very accommodating, very down to earth. And I guess running is a manifestation in some way of us just feeling that we're free to share more than just running. Now, I want to just talk a little bit about some of the threads I see in Adele's writing that tells us about who Adele is. First of all, I've always found him to be very curious. Well, across the three books, that curiosity in his mind comes out very clearly. And I'm thinking even when he was about 4, as you might know from the book, the first book, Adele's mother was a very, very pretty young 15, 16-year-old nanny, Ethiopian. His Arab father, 35 years older, was a big, rich businessman doing business in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. Well, at the age of about 2, Adele's father took on a new wife. Actually, that father took on quite a few wives and was involved with women beyond the marriages, if you could call them marriages. But I was always intrigued about Adele's first stepmother, Rukia. She had quite a time with this 4-year-old and 5-year-old. Adele was very curious, and he got into a lot of trouble. One time, he tried to put a knife or a spoon or a fork into an electric outlet and almost electrocuted himself. Another time, he was away from home, I suppose 500 meters or so, And he was riding his tricycle and he fell into a huge sewer pit they were making. He fell right into that, 9 feet deep. Well, finally, with his yelling and screaming, some workers came and rescued him and took him back to his stepmother. But he just was always curious. At one time, Rukia had such a problem with him that one afternoon, Rukia was very afraid of the Arab husband that she had, that he might find out that she hasn't quite followed Adele, and Adele got into trouble or a problem. She actually gave Adele a little shot of whiskey. And when the father got home, Adele was still asleep. For some reason, I guess that the stepmother thought at least the father would not hear all the details from Adele immediately as to what happened. So this curiosity carries through. And today, he's always, with a great smile, curious about life. As noted, he's curious about the flowers, and he takes pictures and shares those. He's curious about asking, "Oh, what are you up to today? What's going on in your life?" That curiosity really does help him deal with various problem situations in life. The next that I see in Adele through all of his books is he becomes, at a young age, a little change agent. You see, he has an imagination, but he has an intellect that shows through. He's the best student. Yes, he's skipping a grade or two, and he's of slight stature, neat little boy. The others are bigger, and they're a little older. But Adele has learned some English. Adele knows Hamric, and he also knows the Arab languages. So Adele is able to be a teacher and teach them a few lessons. And sometimes Adele would get a few little, some kind of money for helping the students. Because remember, in Ethiopia and in many countries, some of them, the adults, they did not read or write. They only spoke. But Adele could read and write more than one language. So he becomes his own little change agent in a whole community of adults and younger and children. You see, in that way, he helps the people escape out of some more stagnant cultural behaviors and some negativity, because Adele, as a change agent, is not only a helper, but he has this aura of confidence and positivity, which he will never perhaps understand how helpful he was at even a young age. But all throughout his books and his experiences, he is that change agent. I got to be careful because I only got a few minutes. And you see, with his pursuing to help others, he's also developing his own sovereignty. And that comes clear throughout the 3 books. you can't box Adele in. He can't be boxed. And all throughout his history, he is sort of developing his own sovereignty. The person who just introduced me, I respect what he has to say. Because in this world, each one of us needs some kind of sovereignty. We need to feel that, experience that. And over in the Middle East, the Palestinians, for example, damn well deserve some sovereignty. They deserve their own, to be their own. They should not be controlled by a cabal who want sort of control the world. So, throughout Adele's books, I appreciate this striving for sovereignty. Yes, and throughout his books, because he's curious, because he's being a change agent, because he's always, without ever knowing it, wanting his own. He reminds of a little character in a children's storybook that when our 4 children were very young, we tried to share some pretty good literature with them. And I remember one little picture book by Maurice Sendak. Maybe you know it. Where the Wild Things Are. The little character Max, he's always getting into trouble. And one time his mother had just said, Max, it's enough. You're going to your room. It was just before supper. Max decided, well, he could cry himself to sleep. In his sleep, he developed a wonderful dream. And were all these wild things, and they gnashed their terrible teeth, and they roared their terrible roars. And Max decided, with all of his curiosity, well, I guess I will join them. He became the wildest thing of all. And then, in his dream, Max decided, I think I better exercise a little bit of sovereignty here. And he said, wild things, just settle down. Just keep quiet. Because I'm the wildest thing in this room. And they all became quiet. Max woke up, opened the door. And what did he see? His mom was there to give him a big hug. And his supper was still warm. But this curiosity, this being a change agent, always brings about some problems to deal with. But Adele, throughout the 3 books, he deals with this in his own way. And at the same time, he helps everyone else on the trail to try to cope with their problems. I've got to skip some things because of time. Adele's characteristic of resiliency, to me, is very vividly manifested right through his books. I remember reading about after his father passes at a young age. His father had gone to some other rural village and was building a mansion. Yes, within that environment, he was a very rich man. And he had a good ego. Well, after the passing, there was an uncle who was looking after the property. But after some time, Adele was left in the house with nothing. There were fruits growing in the backyard. Some person came, took all the fruits, and he was to pay for them. He backed poor little Adele into a corner, threatened him, and the man stole everything. The only thing Adele had that would bring him a few little shekels were the tools that he would try to sell. And of course, no one was willing to give Adele very much. So, you see, he got to know a neighbor lady. And this resiliency shows up in the relationship they developed. The lady decided Adele could come and stay, have a bed, and maybe the odd supper once every other day. But Adele had to go to the backs of restaurants in various places. He had to steal food. He had to he had to get whatever he needed in order to get by, even though he had a little place to stay in probably a two-room little shack. But you see, his resiliency got him through that. And it was like a gift from heaven that came about because that neighbor lady sort of helped him to survive and have a place to at least sleep at night. And then another relative came down to that place that was being built that belonged to his father. The place was in Adele's name because Adele was the son of the Arab fellow. But what did the local governments do? They decided, listen, this is in Ethiopia. Adele, you're of some kind of mixed relationship here with the Arab. You don't legally, you're not able to keep this land. So Adele lost that as well. But his resiliency just booms out at me. Another little story. He's back in Addis Ababa. He's about 8. Yes, and he's teaching some English to children and so on. He comes across someone who's carrying notes back and forth between a soothsayer and some ladies who had some problems. Ingenious, Adele's resiliency. He decides, okay, he's going to take a bit of money, say 50 cents from a lady, or 2 or 3 of them, go to the soothsayer, but it doesn't quite deliver that little question to the soothsayer. Adele writes the little notes himself, folds them up the way the soothsayer did, and goes back, gives them back to the lady. It solves the problem, whatever the family problem was, or the lady problem. Well, of course, in the market later, he got caught. He got whipped. But I appreciate his resiliency. He was surviving. He was getting by. He found a way to solve a problem he had at that time. I thought that was really, really, really interesting. Now, there's a great number of things I wanted to say, but I'm going to end up with this. Throughout the 3 books, what I really, really was impressed with was the notion of Adele, in his own way, discovering what's meaningful. And you know, as academics, and Adele and I share some lecturing. I was a prof for many years here. What is meaningful? You know, we could think of the various psychologists of times or sort of some kind of therapist. You might think of Freud with his idea of pleasure principle, or you could think of Adler, you could think of knowledge. But what rings a bell for me throughout the 3 books about Adele is that he had a meaningfulness for the moment, for the environment, and it extended existentially across his various adventures to Aden, to all the problems he had with the multiculturalism, and then coming to the US and having to go back again because of visa problems. Eventually getting to Canada. So I'm going back a little bit to Max. What was really so meaningful to Max as a little boy? Well, he wanted to open the door and have supper and see his mom. It reminds me of another character in literature. You can all remember Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He decided that being a part of the flock on the beach and just grubbing for food by the shore and the boats, he said he'd like to fly. He'd like to learn to fly a little higher. He'd like to go a little further. So he became an outcast. The flock didn't like that. Jonathan, why do you need to fly higher, further, when you can just stay with us? You should be concerned about eating, not about flying. Jonathan flew higher, and through a long time, he became the highest flyer, the best diver. He could go 10 feet under the water and get the best fish. But in the final analysis, there are a couple other flyers, seagulls who met him. They were sort of on their way to heaven. They were way up there. But Jonathan still wanted to go higher. He still wanted to do those crazy dives. And many times he fell right to the sand. But in any case, way up there was an old grandpa seagull. I forget his name, maybe Chang. And Chang said, Jonathan, you can fly higher, you might fly further. But what is perfection? What a good question. We don't reach perfection. But he had a message for Jonathan Seagull. Perfection is being here. Perfection is right here. It's not about time. It's not about space. It's not about a distance in a marathon. It's not about overtraining. It's about trying to be the best we can be right now, with all of our hardships, our problems, our irresponsibility, whatever it is. We face where we are, who we are. And finally, I come to a final point. And that is, what was the very most important thing that Max received? The love of his mother, the sharing of love. Now go back to Jonathan. Chang had a final comment to Jonathan. He said, Jonathan, you may keep practicing, but the best thing you can do is practicing the sharing of love. And when you reach that, only then we may realize perfection. The rest doesn't matter. Throughout my wonderful time I've had with Adele, sharing so many things, and Adele helping me with some things I've been going through, he's always just a very good friend, positive. He has lots of humility, his feet are on the ground, and he shares love with his curiosity and his laughter. And we all love you, Adele.
Good afternoon. I have no much to say. I am here to say thank you to all for being here. From Mary to Miller, Gary Miller, thank you. But I see them a little bit in the dark, so I'll ask them to move their chairs a little bit forward. I didn't think I would be taller than this podium. I asked for a handheld mic. I would like to say thank you in 3 languages. Amasaganalo, Shukran, thank you very much. These are the 3 languages I grew up with, and able to express deeply my appreciation. To say too much, I would ruin everything they have said. Instead, always gratitude, always thank you. That's all I have to say. And perhaps a couple of questions given to me, and I'm only here to answer a few questions you have. Just to be on the record, I heard my ex-wife is here, so do my mother-in-law to keep me honest, so I am well grounded. So the first set of questions came from the panel. I will answer them. If you have anything out on your end, I will answer them as well. So I don't know which one of you have the mic, and if you can give it to Carolyn, she can ask the question, I'll answer them, or we can exchange.
Just curious, how were you able to bridge that gap as a father? And like you've acknowledged it. You're an amazing father. I'm very sure about that. I know that. So just curious, we might have folks here in this room that might not necessarily you in person, but might have gone through challenges, and they would love to hear how did you actually not only survive but excelled and thrived in this journey with that gap.
I don't know if I excel or anything in parenting role. Yes, I have insecurities about my parenting skills and attitude because I didn't grow up with my parents. I didn't have a father figure or mom, biological. And having 2 daughters, raising them in North America with Middle Eastern value system, it is very difficult because in North America, if Carolyn's daughter walks in and say, "Mom, meet my boyfriend," she greet them and she tried to get to know the boy. Where I came from, we might kill both of them. This is a serious matter. So I have 2 daughters, and I don't want to kill them. At the same time, I want to prepare them for the life they live in this nation. I had to strike a balance. What is the best interest of the children to be productive? And I have to put my dignity, pride, value system I carried with me in the backseat. I may write a journal, I may cry, I may run marathons or hike with Carolyn, but the only thing is them. That was the equation.
Can I have a follow-up question? Yeah, wonderful. This is amazing. Just curious about the cross-cultural similarities and differences, basically, that you just touched based on in terms of African, Arab, Yemeni, like North American. If you could just elaborate more on that. Yeah, so.
Well, if I speak about that one, I'm not anthropologist or historian, I'm a technical person. Even though Ethiopia is across Red Sea from Yemen, the differences in culture, religion, language is day and light. What is valued in Ethiopian society can be shameful in Yemeni societies. And when it comes to North America, the way we interact with other individuals and how we collectively look ourselves. And back to individuality. In Yemen, the society determines who you get married, when you should pray, what you should eat, and how the wedding should be conducted. In North America, is based on your preferences. So those contrasts is very difficult to negotiate. The key is, if I want to live my life, the same attitude I had back home, I shouldn't be here. Then I have to observe and process and find a middle ground. So adjustment between cultures is a process and a journey. And I don't think being here 40 years, still I adjusted to it. But that trauma will end with my children and life goes.
Adele, you brought up an interesting concept of trauma. And you've overcome a lot of childhood trauma, which carries a lot of risk as an individual, crossing continents, crossing oceans, crossing cultures, crossing languages. What do you think you would have told your younger self when you were a young individual left to your own devices for survival? What were the words you'd have to encourage the next generation, perhaps facing similar traumas in our war-torn world?
That is a very difficult question for me to answer because even though as an individual I experience those traumas, the world is still experiencing them in every corner of the planet today. They may not have opportunity to hear me. Having a Jewish instructor at age 5.5 in the morning, going to the mosque, studying Quran in the afternoon the same day, is not simply you can reconcile. The only thing I can say a child is pick a word God, pick anything good from both sides without taking sides. That's the only thing you can survive, because if you pick the dirt of the other group and the dirt from the other side, you ended up a pile of negative energy. So what survival mechanism I had at that time, if Gideon, which is some of you knew from my first book, The Jewish Instructor, he taught me Torah. And I just listened and tried to find common grounds with Quran teacher where he mentioned even though they call it Suleiman or what was the names? Sometimes I get confused between the names, this Abrahamic religion, because they cross boundaries. So the only thing I would tell to girl or boy, when you are faced with that kind of conflict, try to pick positive aspect of that conversation and attitude, not the negative part.
So moving to more fun and athletic stuff. So you're actually, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. As I told you folks, I have a decision for my life is that I have to run a marathon after this, okay? But before I get to that in my life and think about it, I would like to ask Adel about, so you finished the, one of the major marathons that included running in Boston, Berlin, Chicago, New York, and London. Oh, and Tokyo as well. Okay, which is like the about world marathon majors. Oh, wow, yeah. How did you feel about that only 717 Canadians, 4 Ethiopians, and 1 Yemeni on that list of finishing this? You're that special. Wow, your athletic prowess, I'm actually impressed. Honestly, I'm very impressed, yeah.
Okay, I'm not an athlete. I was running from my problems. And if any achievement in my running, Carolyn, Sheila, Miller, every runner room in this room. So I didn't run to achieve any record. Actually, after completing the 6 majors, I Googled and I don't know, Jerry Rabi, my running mate, he told me 761 Canadian have completed it. Before that, I didn't run for the record. The objectives never was to become number 1, number 3, number 5,500. As I said, I was running to process my own problems. Raising children, dealing with divorce, and work stress is painful. So really, I didn't have any gratification of winning or losing. I am the only Yemeni guy who has completed the 6 majors. That may be important to another Yemeni person to get up and run. To me, is irrelevant because I didn't write the book to be famous, write the book to earn money. It was cleansing. I didn't run to get a record. The record came, that is fine. So the answer is no illusion about winning and losing.
Wow, thanks. Wonderful.
Okay, I have like a very simple question. In your book, you started to have, bargain with your daughter. You got good grades, I'm going to the Kilimanjaro. If you got into college, I'm going to Boston. Okay? And it did work really good for you. So I just need some tips or some motivation factors if I really want to go on, because I have no one to do this with. So can you please help in that?
I worry first the question only coming from this group and they kind of taking advantage of everything.
Definitely, I will.
We may have to give opportunities. Some people, if they have burning desire, without being dismissive of questions. I'm not Dr. Phil. I'm not motivational person. I'm an engineer, an MBA, doing daily work.
But definitely have something to keep you moving on, going on, from one achievement to the other, from one day to the other.
I really don't know. We just get up, smile under stress, and ask Judy if she's here. Deborah, they hike with me. They always see me smiling. I don't know. Maybe just I would be lying to you if I have any answer for those kind of questions.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So let's actually turn to the audience right now. Any questions, folks? I can't see any hands. Okay, there's one here. Okay.
Thank you for everyone in the panel. I have a question for Adele. Did you struggle with your faith at all through the whole process? And if so, how do you identify yourself on a faith level? Where are you at in your faith?
I usually get up. Somebody asks question from this side. I'm not religious, but I'm faithful. Religion is the means to get to connect to something. So I have a faith, never changes, the same faith. I believe in God. It's enough for me. So Christianity, I went to Bible school because they were giving exercise books. Wrangler jeans. I was baptized in the Mormon church. I don't know, one of you mentioned it. I officially a Muslim person, taught Judaism. They all taught me to have faith, and I have faith, and that is the faith I have, regardless of the religion.
Wonderful, thanks. Okay, any more questions? Oh, okay, oh, sorry, okay.
Hello, Adele, my friend. So one thing that's really inspired me is your trips to the mountains, your hikes and stuff like that, and I thoroughly enjoy seeing your pictures on Facebook. I wanted to let you know that that has motivated me. Obviously, I'm not physically capable of doing running or mountain hiking, but I have found something through Rocky Mountain Adaptive and Canmore where they could take me out on kind of like a buggy kind of thing. And I'd be super honored if you'd join me on that trek sometime.
I would.
Count me in for that. Okay. Any more questions, folks? Oh, perfect, yeah. I'm used to saying any questions in class, by the way. So.
And then nobody ever asks. Adele, just a quick question. This has been a long, cathartic journey for you, I think, writing all of these books and putting it all out there. Some of it must have been very difficult. I'm sure some of it felt really good. I'm just wondering if you just feel relieved now that this part of this journey is over.
I was about to ask Carolyn for help. Some of you finished reading my third book, and I made a summary stating how my journals were collected 47 years. I've been writing since I was 11 years old because I didn't have anyone to complain to or share. As a child, I needed to complain, explain, and cry in my journals. Come back to your question. So by doing my journals and now by writing it in the book, I felt I have paid any debt I have in my life, completely relieved. And then I took the journals, handwritten journals I have written 1973 and on, went to Abraham Lake, started a fire, I burned them. I felt relieved and born again. That much is the power of writing, publishing, and getting rid of all the negative energy I carried 60 years.
Wow, wonderful. Thanks. Oh, you see, okay, a couple of questions on the other side. Okay, yeah. So, can I pass the mic?
Hello. Ooh. You are very accomplished and have done so many things in your life. And I just wanted to know what you see as next and if there's going to be a bit of quiet time or do you have more projects underway?
Jerry Miller said I was an active child. And the only thing changed since I was 4 or 5 years old, I just lost the hair. I I don't know. I don't have projects, and I do what I can do on a daily basis, usually be engaged in community, sports, and my children. I'm thinking to write a fourth book, and my hiking mate, she may be here, Deborah and Judy, over the weekend, we were gonna call it From Desert to Summit, or My Pictures Better. So we may write a book about hiking for those immigrants coming to this country and lived here 30 years or more, but they never been in the mountains, they never hiked, or they didn't even know the protocols and the hiking trail. Some humoristic book. Collectively with my running mates and hiking mates, we may write something, but I wouldn't consider that as a project. It's just something to do for fun.
Just honestly to second that Adil has a really good sense of humor. In his book, he mentioned that when he moved to the States, he thought hot dog or actually like actual dog meats. Okay, so, and then he mentioned that he was so super curious, and then it turned out it's not. So yeah. So we've got one more question here.
Hi, Baba. I just noticed there's a lot of youth in the crowd, and I know it's really, your passion to help younger minorities. So I thought if you had any advice on, younger folks, if they face any discriminatory, comments at school and stuff, like, I know you don't have hair, but you once had hair, and, I've had comments on my hair, and you've always taught me, like, don't straighten it, like, try to embrace it. But yeah, if you had any advice for some of the younger people here.
Okay, when your daughter asks questions, it's very intimidating because you have to be honest. At the same time, you have to give a good answer because they don't mix. I really don't like to give any advice because I never taken one. And every one of us, our experiences and frame of references in dealing with situations, my solution may not be suitable to any other person. The only thing I advise my daughters, they have curly hair, and when they were younger, they tried to straighten their hair. And I insisted, be yourself. Don't try to change it to please anyone. And that is a key, because what made straight hair better looking than the curly hair? Nothing. And I've seen a lot of people putting extension and what have you. Everybody knows that's a fake hair, but we're fooling ourselves. So I try to install to a younger person, be yourself, be respectful. Other than that, there is no solution to anything. And that's all I have to say.
Hi, Adil. This is Fikri. Actually, when I know Adil for long, and I know his old stories. We can say that Adil is a story of resilience, and with all challenges that you face in your childhood in Ethiopia or even later in Yemen before you go to USA. I want to ask you how the society in both the countries and the social and tradition from positive aspects play a role in this resilience story that you have now.
Okay, for the record, he is my former brother-in-law. Thank you for coming here from Germany. And if I understood your question, it's the impact of hardship and evolving from one country to another one in me. I think to me that is a strength its own. I have multiple ethnicity and experience. Adversarial situation is a harder situation, and the only way we can do is we just have to process it and ask ourselves. It's not what is happening that counts, is how you respond to it, and trying to put a positive light in these situations. We started the program a little bit slow, and
some of our conversation a little bit extended. I know some of you might be hungry, want to go home, and tomorrow's a work day. I like to take the liberty to move to the next event, which is you saw my mom's side of the ethnicity performing by women from Ethiopia. Interestingly, I have a group of Yemenis going to perform some dance for us, and they happen to be all men. So I don't have to explain a lot about those gender gaps. So I will pass it on. And we can mingle during book signing, and you can read FAQ section of my book. We can exchange, but for now, I would like to just hand over the stage.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for this gift that you've given the world of these 3 books and these wonderful stories. They have meant so much to me. Getting to know you has meant so much to me. Being of mixed heritage, Arab and Latin, we have more in common than just our height. So, thank you. And thank you to the panelists. Please, a round of applause for the wonderful panelists who have shared their insights. Thank you so much. And now I'll allow you to take some seats, and we will invite a wonderful group of young Yemeni men who are here to share of their culture with you. These 4 young men who I will ask to join me on the stage, please. Please come out. Thank you. Let's give them a warm welcome.
So we are going to first listen to a song. It's going to be an Amhari song, and that will be followed by a couple of dances. There will be a Lahji dance as well as a Bara dance. So I will let these young men begin. Thank you.
If anyone There's one more dance. Thank you. That was really energizing. One more round of applause for these amazing young men. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your love of these books. The book signing will be happening upstairs. Adil has made his way upstairs already, or Adil, as we like to call him. And so, yeah, if you have more questions, go grab him. He loves to chat. And thank you again for being here.
He's been inspiring us. I guess, Nova, you've inspired me so much in my life, and I'm so grateful to have you as a dad and all your guidance. I literally don't know what I would do without you, and I don't think I would be who I am today without your guidance, and I'm so grateful that so many people came and got to hear your words, and everyone's so impressed by you, but I feel like that's just who you've been my whole life, so it's really nice, and I'm proud of you for facing your past and embracing your trauma. I think that's really difficult. So you motivate me to succeed. I love you. Say the same thing. Hi, Baba. I'm also grateful that just said, all my life I've been that man down there that everyone's so happy to see today. And that's me for years. So nothing was too surprising, but it's always nice to see the same person I've known my entire life. I'm also happy. I have a really great dad, and I think you inspire me every day. I wouldn't be here, where I'm at, with all my accomplishments. I mean, my sister with all my accomplishments without you. But I'm also proud of you for overcoming, and especially the question regarding how you were a father figure. I never felt that you didn't have a father unless I knew your backstory. You're a great dad, and I'm also really proud of you, and I love you too. Thank you. Thank you.